Ja'Marr Chase had a dominant rookie season. He had the most receiving yards since 1960 and the second most of all time. He joined Randy Moss as the only wide receiver to ever score 6 or more times from outside of 40 yards out. By any measure, Ja'Marr Chase smashed his rookie season. He and Joe Burrow nurtured a connection in college that translated to the pros and took them all the way to a Super Bowl. But now heading into year 2, there are some reasons for concern. He was 38th in target rate. His 7.5 targets per game were fewer than guys like Jacoby Myers and Sterling Shepard. But I'm here to tell you not to worry whatsoever. Not only does he belong in the top 5, but if you are a guy that has a little bit of risk tolerance, you can feel comfortable taking him as early as the first overall pick. I'm Dave Kluge, and I'm here to tell you that Ja'Marr Chase is one of the best picks that you can make in the first round this year. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page. That's youtube.com/footballguys. We're bringing you these short videos every single week, and we've also got a plethora of full-length shows that you can check out, both live and pre-recorded. youtube.com/footballguys. Be sure to sign up for that. Now let's dive in and talk a little bit more about Ja'Marr Chase's rookie season and what we should expect from him in year 2. Ja'Marr Chase averaged 85.6 yards per game as a rookie. Looking at the top 6 rookies of all time, Ja'Marr Chase fits in at 4th. The other guys are Odell Beckham Jr., Anquan Boldin, Justin Jefferson, Michael Thomas, and Randy Moss. Pretty elite company to be a part of. As expected, the average rookie saw an increase in targets heading into year 2. As a matter of fact, Odell Beckham was the only guy that saw a target dip, and that's because he had an absurd 10.8 targets per game as a rookie. On average, though, these players saw about a 10% increase in their targets into year 2. As you'd expect, that coincided with a 2.1% increase in receptions in year 2. Now, things get a little bit weird, though, when you start looking at the yardage and touchdown output. Out of these 6 rookies that I'm talking about, on average, they saw a drop in yardage by 4% heading into year 2. But what is really concerning is the touchdown drop. On average, they dipped 29.5% in touchdowns per game from year 1 to year 2. Justin Jefferson, who had the lowest touchdown rate out of all of these rookies, was the only guy that was able to see an increase into year 2. Randy Moss was the only guy that had a higher touchdown rate than Ja'Marr Chase, setting up for what could be a ton of year 2 regression. In addition to that, Ja'Marr Chase had the lowest target share out of all of these rookies. The good news is, even if Chase hits those regressions on the nose, sees a slight uptick in opportunity and a dip in yardage and touchdowns, he would still score 277 PPR fantasy points last year, which have been good enough for wide receiver 8 overall. So because of his volume and efficiency, we're looking at a pretty insulated value here where he's probably not going to dip outside of the top 12 receivers. Now, what happens if he doesn't regress? I mean, this guy was wildly efficient as a rookie. Why can't it carry over into year 2? Chase is a very unique player in how he gets his yards on the field. Typically what we see as ADOT, average depth of target, goes up, yards after the catch go down. That makes sense, right? Well, not if you're Ja'Marr Chase. Ja'Marr Chase's average depth of target last year came 12.6 yards downfield. DK Metcalf and Terry McLaurin were the only other guys who averaged more than 120 targets who saw targets further downfield, and Chase smashed both of them in fantasy football yardage and touchdowns. Now, keeping that same threshold with 120 targets, there was only one player who saw more yards after the catch per reception than Ja'Marr Chase, and that was Deebo Samuel. So not only is this guy garnering valuable targets downfield, but once he catches the ball, he is ripping off yards after the catch, putting him in as one of the most efficient players in the NFL on a per target basis. He actually averaged 11.4 yards per target last year, which was second in the NFL and the most ever recorded by a rookie wide receiver. Now, if we tack on that average of about a 9.9, 10% increase in targets, and he's able to maintain that efficiency, we're looking at about 1,600 yards and 15 touchdowns next year, which would be most likely a top 3 fantasy finish. Now, what happens if everything goes right? We saw Justin Jefferson take a huge step forward from year 1 into year 2 after dominating as a rookie. He saw a 25.7% target increase and maintained his efficiency. He actually boosted his efficiency in the touchdown department. I'm not going to project that for Chase because he already scored quite a few touchdowns as a rookie, but let's tack on that 25.7% target increase from year 1 into year 2 while maintaining his yards per target and his touchdown efficiency. We would be looking looking at 161 targets, 102 receptions, 1,835 yards, and 17 touchdowns. That would go down as the 4th best fantasy season of all time, behind what Cooper Kupp did last year, what Jerry Rice did in 1995, and what Antonio Brown did in 2014 and 2015. That is the type of ceiling we are looking at for Ja'Marr Chase, an absolute game breaker for fantasy football. Now, another concern is T. Higgins. T. Higgins is a very good wide receiver in his own right, and he's going to command targets. When we look at the sample size of games that T. Higgins and Ja'Marr Chase were both healthy and playing together, their usage rates were almost identical. T. Higgins was also drawing targets downfield at a 12.0 ADOT compared to Ja'Marr Chase's 12.6. The big difference is the yards after the catch ability. Like I said earlier, typically as ADOT goes up, YAC goes down, and that's what we saw with T. Higgins. We did not see that with Ja'Marr Chase. So while these guys maintain similar usage, Chase's athleticism makes him a much better overall receiver. This guy was drafted 5th overall. He tests across the board in the 90th and 85th percentile. T. Higgins is a very good receiver, but he relies more on his body and size to catch contested balls than he does to rip off big chunk plays like Chase does. Because of that, they both have relatively safe floors, but Chase's ceiling is so much higher. So as fun as it is to go against the grain and make these really clickbaity, attention-grabbing takes, I don't really have one with Ja'Marr Chase. I think that he is slotted in exactly where he should be as a top 5 overall pick. The nuance with where you select him has to do with your personal risk tolerance. Me, I'm played a little bit safer in the first rounds. I'd prefer Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson just because we know that these guys are locked into 160 targets. We know they're going to be the focal point of their offense, and they are going to provide you, more likely than not, a top 5 finish. However, if you like to absorb a little bit of risk with your first round picks, take Chase as early as you want. You can make a very compelling argument to take him as early as number 1 overall with the upside he has. Now, I know Cooper Kupp just had the best season in fantasy football history, but he's 30, he is likely to regress a little bit, and now he's got Allen Robinson on the team to deal with. It's going to take some more targets from him. So Chase has the highest ceiling of any wide receiver in fantasy football right now. Wherever he drops to you, feel comfortable taking him because you are getting a guy who has the floor of a top 12 receiver and the ceiling to put up one of the best fantasy football seasons of all time. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please come back every single week. You can find our videos at youtube.com/footballguys. If you got anything to add, drop it below, give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and I will see you next week.